I am so excited to share what a school psychologist does. Yay! Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me as I talk today about school psychology. Who is a school psychologist? What do they do? How do they spend their times? What are their areas of expertise? I'm so excited to be able to share this with you. Now take a moment and I'm going to ask you to think about a child, an adolescent, a youth, someone that you can envision. Maybe you don't know everything about this individual. Think about where that child stays, where they live. How are they feeling? Do you know? What other things do they have in that invisible backpack that we all wear that carries every bit of our life experiences? Are you thinking about that child? Really thinking about that child? Now, think about that child encountering some challenges. Think about that child experiencing some less than optimal feelings. Sometimes we don't know when things are going on, right? Sometimes we can't see inside a child's head, their brain. Think about it even for ourselves. Do people really know what we are thinking? Do people know what we have experienced, what we're bringing to the table? But let's zoom back to that child again now. How do you think that child is feeling? How's that child doing? Now I want you to add a layer onto this child. Now let's put that child in the environment in which they spend a long duration of their time, and that is in school. I want you to think about that child's experiences in schools. What happens if they were not quite picking up the skills at a level on par with their other peers in their class? It still could be at a very acceptable rate of learning. However, what happens if it's not like their friends? Maybe it's a lot faster. Maybe it's a lot slower. They just aren't getting it, or they're getting it so quickly that they are bored. Now think about this child again. What can we do to bring them back to the right sense of feeling good? Do we know what's really going on? Do we know how to help them? What happens if now this child, this youth, this adolescent is also exhibiting some behaviors that are putting a lot of stressors on the educators in the school building. A lot of stressors maybe on the bus driver, on the cafeteria staff, on their other peers. And let's say that maybe those stressors also generate out into the community. They may or may not. How can we help them? This is what a school psychologist does. They work to identify what is happening outside a child, the context around it, because that is so critical. They think about what the child is bringing to the situation. What are they entering in with the skills? Are there certain areas of strength that we can really foster and move forward to help get them to feel stronger internally about themselves, to give them the courage to keep doing what they need to be able to be doing to learn, and emphasizing learning from doing. This is what a school psychologist does. They help. They provide direct services to students, to youth, to adolescents, to be able to make them successful, not only just within the four walls of a classroom, but matriculating through the hallway, out into the area of after-school experiences as well, too. They help that child find him or herself as a unique individual. And importantly, they also help create the environment and structure it so it helps support that child. That's what school psychologists do. Now I want to flip this around a little bit because school psychologists do a lot more as well too. I want you to think now about any educators that you know, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a paraprofessional who works in the school, whether it happens to be a guidance counselor, it's an administrator in a building, or speech language pathologist, social worker, someone who is working with children. What happens if they've kind of, what we sometimes say, hit the wall? They've used every skill that they have in their repertoire, and nothing seems to be just right to help a child get to where they know they should be. They have hit the wall and they are frustrated and they are ready to throw their hands up in the air. We, as school psychologists, support that individual, that team of educators, teachers, staff, administrators, educational leaders, to be able to bring a voice to the table to help think about the mindset around how to help not even just one child. If you're thinking about one child, know that we are also putting the skill sets on the table to be able to help many more children. We want to be able to be there to be able to support developing the skill sets, the capacity, and confidence for our educators to be able to meet the needs of our students. This is what a school psychologist does. Now think about educators at the table, a team that's trying to put the best practices in place for students at that school, across the district, across the community. There's so many moving parts and pieces, so much infrastructure that has to be put in place first. We just don't put a thing in place and make it work. We know that evidence-based practices need a context around there, right? To be able to make that work. That is what school psychologists can bring to the table. We can help build the right context to be able to make sure those best practices remain best practices, and guess what? Get the impact that we hoped that to have, and sustain those practices over time. How cool is that? Not just for one child, not just for 1 month, not just for one school year, but stay entrenched in the system to be able to meet the needs of future generations as well too. This is what school psychologists do. We bring to the table the knowledge about not only child development, data analysis, looking at individual differences and strengths, but also that data mindset, systems knowledge. How do we build the capacity, the systems, the infrastructure to be able to make sure that everything can sustain and not be competing to where we start fragmenting things and nothing really seems to work? School psychologists bring this varied level of expertise, multi-tiered systems of support for a child to be able to be successful. And let me change that. Not just one child, but many children and future generations. This is what school psychologists do. Isn't that not the most amazing job to have in the world? To know that you can have this ray of influence? Isn't it the most amazing thing to know that you have this resource in your schools? Seek out this very incredibly, sometimes untapped resource to provide academic and behavioral support systems for students in schools. The mental health supports that are needed for students and also educators in schools. The systems of support for parents to be able to help be active voices and collaborators with schools. Consultation with teachers, with families. What about with our external community providers to be able to bring those supports and embed them, and also what we do within the school and filter it out as well too. We do this all within a data-informed approach to be able to be culturally responsive, because our skill sets are also to be able to listen. Not only just sit at a table, but listen to hear, and importantly, to understand what we need to be able to do to make things work for students, for teachers, for educators, for families, and the community. We also know that sometimes horrible things happen. School psychologists will be there to be able to provide response during crisis situations. It's a skill set that we hope that we never have to use, but it is there for us to be able to offer to schools. School psychologists work in schools, public, private, charter. We also work in early childhood centers. We also work with juvenile justice. We also work in clinics and hospitals. And many also are employed in universities, learning clinics, and also in independent practice. We love to be able to have one school psychologist for 500 students. 1 to 500 helps us provide this wealth and array of supports and services that we can provide. Our goal is to make sure that we were there for kids, doing what's right for kids and their families, and the teachers who are there also to support them. I have been so excited to be able to share this, and thank you so much for joining me. If you liked it, go ahead and give me a comment down below. Tell me if you're a school psychologist, you're working with a school psychologist, you have anything else you want to add, any kind of questions. I'm going to be doing a series about the practice of school psychology, and I'm so excited to be able to share all these resources. Continue to look down below. I'm going to have lots of links there. Go ahead and subscribe if you want to. This way you'll also be informed if you also click that little bell piece for whenever I do upload videos. I'd love to be able to have your thoughts and your impact and your sharing. Until next time, thank you so much for being here, and I hope that you're able to give a high five to a school psychologist. If you're a school psychologist, give a high five to yourself and be there for kids.